Tale of the Gelknooker. Long ago, in a forest region called the Rostock Heath, near the city of Rostock in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, there lived a legendary creature known as the Gelknooker. He was a peculiar being, short, thin, and with strangely yellowish skin. People said he had no real bones in his body, that he was unusually supple and flexible. No one knew where he had come from. With a mischievous grin, he haunted the woods and the surrounding fields. Especially during harvest time, when the farmers had laboriously piled up their haystacks, the Gelknooker would appear. He danced through the tall grass and soared over the meadows, and wherever he swung his arms, a whirlwind would rise, for he possessed magical powers to summon strong winds and whirlwinds, and could even fly upon them. With loud, gleeful laughter he swept across the fields, sending hay flying through the air and driving the farmers to despair. Often only dust and straw could be seen, and amid the storm his yellow, gaunt figure spun lightly like a leaf in the wind. The Gelknooker also loved to frighten travelers passing through the forest. Women and children were especially unsafe from his tricks. Often he would hide behind a bush or an old tree stump, and when someone unsuspecting came by, he would suddenly stick out his yellow head and roll his large eyes. Then he burst into eerie laughter that echoed through the whole forest. Those who met him fled in terror, for none knew what the strange spirit might intend. Sometimes he would sit right in the middle of the path, pulling faces just to startle wanderers. Yet he never truly harmed anyone. It seemed as though he only sought attention and took delight in the fear of others. Eventually, several men grew tired of the Gelknooker and his mischief and decided to kill him. Armed with rifles, they lay in wait for him at a clearing in the woods where he was often seen. They wanted to put an end to his haunting once and for all. When the little yellow man stepped laughing out of the bushes into the open, the men emerged and raised their weapons. But the Gelknooker did not take a single step back. Instead, he spread his arms wide, and a strange humming filled the air. Suddenly the wind began to twist, first softly, then with rising force, until a mighty whirlwind formed right where the men stood. The grass flattened, the trees bent, and before the men could understand what was happening, the storm swept them up into the sky. Their screams echoed through the forest as they were carried higher and higher. Below them, the Gelknooker laughed, his face distorted in triumphant mockery. Then, with a sudden gesture, when the men had risen high enough, he let the wind die. The whirlwind vanished, and the men plunged to their deaths. From that day on, no one dared challenge the Gelknooker again. Yet to the poor and the sick, the Gelknooker was kind and benevolent. Especially the children of poor families found joy through him. Often, when the sun stood high above the forest, he would appear in a meadow and call the children to him. Laughing, he made the wind dance around them, and before they knew it, a gentle breeze lifted them from the ground. Like borne on invisible hands, they floated through the air, spinning in circles, their hair fluttering, their laughter ringing across the fields. The Gelknooker stood below, pointing upward, steering the wind, laughing with them, while their parents clapped their hands in delight. At the end of each game, he would gently set the children back on the grass. During these gatherings, all forgot their poverty and their troubles, and the forest was filled with laughter and happiness. To one old, poor woman, the Gelknooker was especially kind. She lived alone in a small hut at the edge of the forest, forgotten by the world. Often, when the wind whistled through the cracks in her walls and the fire burned low, there came a soft knock at her door, and there he stood, the little yellow man, with his small hat and a sly smile. He brought her pouches full of coins, secretly stolen from the richer folk nearby. Yet the old woman accepted the money not out of greed, but out of gratitude. For she knew that the Gelknooker was her friend, the only one who had not forgotten her. Often he stayed with her for a while, sitting by the hearth, listening to her tales from long ago. Between them grew a friendship, warm and gentle, like that between a grandmother and her beloved grandchild. When the Gelknooker left again, he always promised to return soon, and she blessed him in the flickering firelight. To her he was no phantom, no demon, but a good, lonely spirit who sought shelter in the forest and found a piece of it with her. One day the Gelknooker sat alone deep in the woods. The sun shone faintly through the leaves, and he splashed his thin legs in the clear water of a brook. He tried to catch fish with his feet, giggling softly, enjoying the peace of the forest. But suddenly, the woods fell silent. No bird sang, no leaf stirred in the wind. The breeze itself had stopped. A heavy stillness settled over everything, as if nature held its breath. A chill ran down the Gelknoker's back. Something was different. Something was there. Behind him, deep among the trees, a darkness began to stir. It seemed to breathe, to move, as though alive. Then he remembered the stories the people had told, of a creature that had recently haunted the region, taking humans away, who never returned. They called it Burian, the unknown one. Fear gripped the Gelknoker, and he wanted to flee. But at the same time, a burning curiosity rose within him, stronger than his fear. He had to know what this being was. So he stood up and stepped deeper into the dark forest, drawn to the blackness so hypnotically that he forgot his shoes by the brook. As he ventured further, the darkness grew thicker, and suddenly, from the shadow stepped forth a creature so dreadful that even the wind had ceased to breathe. It was Burian, the unknown one. A shadow black as pitch, with glowing evil eyes that burned like violet flames in the dark. Its form was shifting and uncertain, yet from its darkness reached out many arms, long, gnarled, like the branches of dead trees, ending in claws that grasped for life itself. The Gelknoker stood frozen before him, paralyzed by terror. Then the creature lunged, its arms seized him and pulled him into its shadow. A wave of icy pain swept through him, as though life itself were being drained from his chest. But at the last moment, the Gelknoker gathered all his strength and, with a howling gust, tore himself free from Burian's grip. Gasping and trembling, he stumbled backward, his heart pounding with fear. But Burian did not relent. From the darkness he gathered new power and attacked again. The Gelknoker, shaking with both fear and fury, felt something stir deep within him, that ancient force that commanded the wind, stronger than ever before. He screamed, and with a mighty breath summoned a whirlwind. The air roared, leaves swirled, trees splintered. With outstretched arms he hurled the storm against the black shadow, so powerful that trunks and boulders flew through the air. Burian was forced back, yet not destroyed. Again and again his shadowy limbs reached for the little yellow man, while the Gelknoker fought desperately for his life. An apocalyptic battle unfolded. The sky darkened, and a storm arose the likes of which the Rostock heath had never seen. The wind howled in deafening chorus, and the ground trembled under the fury of the elements. The Gelknoker stood at the center of the chaos, his eyes glowing with resolve as he summoned all his might. Around him, whirlwinds raged, tearing trees from the ground, hurling rocks through the air, shredding the forest. Thunder cracked, lightning split the heavens again and again, striking treetops that burst into flame. The fire spread swiftly, a sea of embers and smoke devouring the forest. Amid storm and fire, light and shadow clashed, wind against darkness, Gelknoker against Burian. The dark being seemed to feed on the shadows themselves, yet each flash of lightning weakened him, each roar of wind tore pieces from his smoky form. But the Gelknoker, too, was growing weaker, for Burian struck him again and again from the darkness, slashing with his claws or hurling waves of deadly shadow. The forest world was torn apart, and their battle became a struggle for the fate of the land itself. When at last the storm ceased, the Rostock heath was unrecognizable. The sky was black with smoke, the earth scorched, and distant fires still smoldered. Of Burian, the unknown one, there was no trace. Perhaps he had been ripped apart by storm and flame, or banished back into the dark realm from which he came. No one knew. But the Gelknoker lay amid the ashes, his body broken, his clothes in tatters, and the wind he once commanded now silent. With a faint voice he called for help, weeping softly, but no one came. No bird, no man, no sound answered him. Only the crackling of fire accompanied his final breaths. Tears ran down his soot-streaked face, and the wounded forest wept with him. At last, he succumbed to his wounds, alone and forgotten, in the stillness of the ruined woods. Days later, some villagers found his body, half covered by ash and earth. Afraid to bury him, They said his body might still summon a storm, so they burned him where the fire still smoldered. When the people of the Rostock Heath heard that the Gelknooker was dead, a deep sadness fell upon the land. The poor and the sick, whom he had often helped, could hardly believe it. To them he had never been a ghost, but a friend, a strange, small, yet kind protector. The children who had once laughed and flown with him wept bitter tears. For days they waited for his return, hoping by some miracle he might come back, but the wind that had always heralded his arrival remained still. No one mourned him more than the old woman who had loved him so dearly. Night after night she sat in her rocking chair by the fire, her head in her hands, weeping softly. She thought of his laughing eyes, his gentle voice, and the warmth he had brought into her lonely life. Without him, her hut felt empty, and even the fire in her hearth seemed to burn dimmer. In time, the Rostock Heath healed from the scars of the great storm. The fires had long since died out, new trees grew upon the charred ground, and the birds returned to sing. The people breathed easier, yet a quiet fear lingered in their hearts. For they knew that once two mighty beings had fought there, the good wind-born Gelknooker and the dark Burian, the unknown one. From that day on, the locals avoided the forest's darker places. There were paths no one dared walk, even in daylight, especially where the shadows lay deepest and no sunlight reached the ground. None dared linger. They said Burian might still lurk there, hidden in the gloom, waiting for anyone who ventured too close. But stronger than the fear of Burian remained the memory of the Gelknooker, that strange being of unknown origin, mischievous yet full of love. He had been both tormentor and friend, a ghost who haunted, laughed, helped, and played. The children who had once danced through the air with him grew older, but they never forgot him. When they walked through the forest, they sometimes gazed deep into the Rostock Heath, as though hoping to see his yellow figure among the trees, the little yellow man with the feathered hat, sitting on a log and waving cheerfully. Many believed he would one day return by some miracle, when the wind blew strong again and the leaves danced as they once had. But that day never came. The Gelknooker remained gone, and with him a piece of the magic that had once filled the Rostock Heath. Only the wind, whispering softly through the fields and the woods, still told his story, of the little yellow friend who was laughter and storm alike.